Good morning. It's Wednesday morning in our second week of not having a service. So I thought I'd do a podcast. Maybe it's called something else because it's video. But I'd like to just spend a few moments picking up some crumbs from Sunday morning's sermon. Every time I preach, there's things that would be good to talk about, things that captured my attention, but don't really fit in the sermon. And so this morning I want to talk to you about being God's house. In fact, that's the title of this podcast. We are His house. For about 8 years, Amanda and I lived in Texas, and having family in Iowa and in Minnesota, that was quite a trip. And so time or two, 3, 4 times, depending on the year, we would make that big journey. And it was always good to get home. It was always good to be back with family. But then at some point, because it's such a long trip, we would spend several days out of town, and it was always good to come back home. So in that time period, it really felt like we had two homes. It was good to go home when we would go visit family, but it was good to go home when we would get back to Texas. Home has a special place in our hearts. It's because that's where we live. It's where all these things happen in our lives. We arrange our homes to be comfortable to us. I know that today when I'm done with work and I go home, there's going to be an easy chair for me to sit on. Now, it's probably going to be occupied by at least one, if not 2 or 3 children, but it'll be there, and it'll be where, or at least close to where I expect it to be, and that's part of what makes it homey. But when God says He's building His house, of course, He's not talking about the physical structure. He's talking about people. In fact, some translations say that He's building His household. Let me actually read that for you. I've got it here. It's Hebrews chapter 3, verse 6 is where we were Sunday. It says, "But Christ was faithful as a son over His household." That's comparing Him to Moses, who was faithful as a servant. And we are that house. We are that household. And then he goes on, he says, "If we hold on to our confidence and the hope in which we boast." So not every person is part of the household of God. Just like not every piece of furniture that exists in Harlan is part of my house, not every person that lives in Harlan is part of my household. Not every person is part of the household of God. And the reason that this jumps out at me is because that tells me that we, as the believers of Jesus Christ, we who have placed our faith and hope in Him for eternity, we're special. And not the kind of special that would make you go and be a jerk to people, that you'd be proud and arrogant, but one that humbles us. We're special because He didn't have to choose us. He didn't have to call us to be His own. He didn't have to make us part of His household, but He did. And so just a thought for the day, spend some time pondering how much God really loves you. How much we don't really deserve that love, and then let it flow out of you, and how you love your family, how you love your neighbors, how you love those who don't love you back. Just a thought. Things like this, little nuggets like this, remind me of what is special about being a believer. We all live in this broken world. The whole COVID-19 pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, has reminded us that life is fragile, that everything that we know is normal can be turned up on its head very quickly. And it causes us to be reminded that as a believer, we have more to expect. We shouldn't be satisfied with everything that goes on in this world. We shouldn't be all consumed with this world. We should have our eyes and gaze focused on God. Colossians 3:2 says, "Keep your mind and your heart focused on Him." That's a terrible paraphrase, but you can look it up yourself. Anyway, the title of this series of podcasts, and it'll be a series if I do more than this, right, is Made for More. This passage reminded me of how much I long to actually be in the presence of God. And I hope that it'll do that for you too. Thanks for watching. Look forward to meeting with you in person soon. But until then, keep reading, keep praying, and keep being the church in exile.